everyone, today we have the absolute pleasure and privilege of being joined by Noah Miller, who is the founder and chief advisory officer of Rho Impact. Noah, how are you doing today?
Hey, Harris. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. And looking forward to having an amazing conversation, learning a thing or two, which you definitely will be able to do, and talking all things business. So without further ado, shall we make a start?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Amazing. So, you know what? If you can take us back to the, beginning of the journey, where it all got started, perhaps the early days of, when you were looking at what to do, right? And what actually got you to the position you're in. So you can maybe talk a little about your journey, perhaps some ups and downs, and how you got to the position you're in today.
Yeah, Harris, great question. So, I get that question a lot. How long have you been in ESG? But probably a more appropriate question to be, how long has ESG been in me? And that's half joke, half serious statement in the sense that this journey has started since childhood. I've been obsessed with big problems and trying to find solutions to big problems. And Rho Impact was really, I'd say, like the labor of love from all of the various ESG consulting experiences I've had over my career in seeing how do we find market-based solutions to world challenges. So really taking that opportunity, big problem, big business opportunity. A little played out of a statement, but I think that crux is the real foundation for what led me to this work. And, is a core thematic consistency in my journey in supporting corporations, investors, governments, nonprofits in advancing environmental, social, and governance objectives.
Amazing, amazing. Now, what has that journey looked like? I know there's perhaps been some ups and downs, but maybe if you can, walk us through, how you actually got in terms of getting the business together. Were there some challenges you went through, and I guess the process of it all?
Yeah, so I had always been in boutique consulting shops and was always daydreaming about software. Not being a software person nor a tech person per se, I was always thinking there's got to be an easier way to do this than deploying myself in this band of consultants to take over another company and start telling them how to change their business and do these things. I figured there's got to be a better way. And it was that search that had led me to my co-founders around how can we start taking these really abstract, really theoretical, like really kind of heady ideas and make tools and kind of data flows that enable people to put it into practice today.
Got it.
So we're talking about essentially, when we're thinking about the climate space and all, the net zero transition, that, the end of the world by 2050, if we don't stop this, all of these questions come down to answering what we're trying to answer with our software, Koi.eco, and at Rho Impact. What is the impact going to be if this climate solution scales? And that's really the question that everybody's asking right now as we're needing to make some, multi-billion-dollar decisions on where do we allocate capital to make sure the whole world can transition and be resilient in this low carbon economy.
Absolutely. Amazing. Now, what does your role look like at the company, right? A typical day. Are you very much focused on the growth and driving it forward? Are you still, in the ins and outs of the business and checking every little thing? Where does your role look like? And I guess a typical day for yourself.
Yeah, well, I'll connect that back to your earlier question, which I did not answer directly, which is what are the challenges, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like I'm living that answer right now in where we're at with Rho Impact, where the beginning of our business was really the majority of our business was consulting.
Yeah.
We were all practitioners in the field, and we were starting to apply data science and software engineering to help supercharge the practitioner work. And then we transitioned to essentially having some tech-enabled services. So being able to have more scale, more front end of the work completed by a software. And now we're at the point where we're trying to transition to a fully self-service software platform so that anybody working on climate, that they're able to do the work that, quite frankly, we had been brought in time and time again to do on their behalf. But at the end of the day, we know, right, that the whole analogy, you got to teach a man how to learn how to fish. We need to teach people how to learn how to do this.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to package here with Koi, our kind of flagship offering. How can we essentially provide the press easy button for answering these really abstract questions around how good is that thing that you're working on going to be in the future when the climate is very different than it may be today.
Got it. Interesting. Amazing. Now, if we can talk very much market, right? The industry, the market, the trends that are happening. What are you really seeing? What changes have you seen perhaps in the last few years? What changes or, shifts do you think we're in right now? And how do you think they're going to pan out over the next few months and maybe even years to come? How can business owners navigate these changes that are coming and how can they avoid getting themselves caught out?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, you make a good point, Harris, around the getting called out part, because at the end of the day, things that used to be peripheral to the core operations of the business and used to be kind of fluffy and squishy, like these things like impact claims and our environmental stewardship and all of that, now that's fraud. That's the
Mm,
significant shift is it's going from you might have your hand slapped by a regulator or, there might be a social media post that, you know, your community does not engage with. But ultimately, now we're talking millions and sometimes billions of dollars in fines, in capital losses, you name it. I'll give you a great example because this is my personal favorite greenwashing incident in the past couple of years. Is the investment chief of DWS, Deutsche Bank's investment arm. His office was raided by a SWAT team over greenwashing incidents.
oh,
So just
wow.
picture that, right? Put yourself in your desk and you get raided because you put a statement out there that wasn't verified or substantiated by a third party. So I'd say that is the biggest shift. Things that used to be fluff, like the impact of your product or service, and things that used to be more marketing and sort of, messaging, is now getting into the math. Show me the math, who verified that, and prove it. And that's the biggest shift that we're seeing is now that prove it element, millions of dollars of funding allocated or not based on the prove it around those claims that these various folks are making.
Got it.
So that's
Got it.
the number one shift, I would say.
Is there anything else, perhaps on the flip side, that you think perhaps, in the future wise, how do you see things panning out? What does the future look like in that case? If we don't fix these problems and if we, just plod along, what kind of future does that look like for the industry, for business owners, and why is this such an important thing that they need to take action on sooner rather than later?
Yeah, yeah. Well, a lot of answers, but the short and sweet of it is or else. I mean, there is no turning back, or else is the other option. At the end of the day, the timing is super ripe for anybody that's working on climate solutions and really focused on, quantifying the potential future impact of these things that they're working on in different industry applications, different scales by different timeframes. That is the fundamental question that every single policymaker, investor, creator of these solutions is needing to answer. And it also provides the kind of unifying language for how are we going to move every industry across society and do all the decarbonization work needed to actually have this low carbon or net zero economy. So it's kind of like, we're in it together, whether we know it or not. And we're all teammates, whether we're aware of it or not, because we're all effed unless we address this collectively.
Absolutely, absolutely, very well said. Now, a trend I wanted to get your thoughts on. Obviously, this trend has blown up last 10, 20 years, only going to get even bigger. And that's the power of social media, right? Online presence, social media, going from everybody being in their small little areas to now being connected at a fingertip to people all over the world. So, how important has social media been in your journey through the business? What kind of impact has social media made in doing business and reaching that level of growth? And perhaps what are some pitfalls that people need to be aware of to avoid getting themselves caught out or trapped or finding themselves in trouble? What's your overall perspective on social media?
Yeah. Oh, Harris, I'm glad you raised that because that's, potentially the number two biggest shift that we're seeing, right? Is that things that used to happen on the other side of the world behind closed doors, in some language you've never heard of, three levels down in the supply chain, that's all over your Facebook now, right? And all
Yeah,
over your Instagram and whatnot. So point being, because of that connectivity, you're out, you're exposed whether you like it or not. And even though social media, plenty of things that I personally don't like, I don't want to get into, the philosophical, cultural elements, But ultimately, it's the ultimate like transparency and accountability function of social media because nobody wants to be called out that way. No brand, no individual, etc. So it's kind of like the positive peer pressure of you don't want to look that way, so you better do the right thing, or all of your stakeholders will know that you are, you know, talking out of one side and working out the other.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I guess another massive sub-trend of the back of social media is really that founder-led presence, that founder-led content, founder-led brand, whereas perhaps might have execs maybe in their offices, wouldn't really see them interacting on social media, giving value, showcasing who they are. But I think now it's to the point where if you don't have an online presence or a LinkedIn or something, so somebody's wondering, well, hang on a sec, what's going on here? So how
Mhm.
important has your online presence been, right, in terms of getting the education across, showcasing what you do, and people perhaps reaching out to be able to interact, and how important has that been? And if somebody's on the fence about putting themselves out there and obviously being vocal about what they do, what advice would you give on that front? How important has that been to you and your brand?
Yeah, I mean, to me, as a consultant trying to become a software provider, your point of view is everything, right? And your mouthpiece is your LinkedIn page or your typically for us, it's typically LinkedIn, but all the other socials out there. Because it seems today folks are expecting that not only are you good at what you do, but you have a very explicit and pointed perspective on these big issues that are impacting business, culture, society, the fundamentals of how our society works. So I would say, that's on one hand. On the other hand, for all the boutique consultants out there or high growth startups, it's like that is the only way to cut through the noise because you're never going to have the budgets to be at every conference. You're never going to have the relationships that go back 25 years from the people that have been in the same role for 30 years, which doesn't happen anymore. So that's another shift that folks need to, wrestle with. So it's really been everything. I mean, having your point of view and being able to essentially have people that will take that point of view and act. There is no better, I think, no better format for consultants or folks that are providing not, a packaged set of insights than social media.
Absolutely. Very well said. Now, if we can hone in now more on the business side of things, obviously talking all things business and maybe really going in depth for people that don't really know, but what are some areas of the business that you think you're going from strength to strength and you feel like, this is a positive and you're really proud of? It could be anywhere across the business. It could be operations, sales, lead generation, and everything. And what are some areas of the business that perhaps you're having some challenges and some hurdles you feel like you need to overcome, or maybe you've already overcome them, and what advice would you give if somebody's in that position and they're kind of struggling to juggle? What's
Mm-hmm.
your overall take on that front of things?
Yeah. So on the things that we're really proud of, I think a big part of our success at Rho Impact has been we have put our hand up every time an entity has said we're looking for guidance on this or we're looking for some response to this framework we're putting together. Essentially, the field building efforts and the capacity building for the industry, which typically is not, is volunteer work because you're with a coalition of competitors and, cooperators. But that has been a big, big element, I think, of our both credibility, sort of recognition in the field, ability to put a software together that reflects all of the work we've done on this topic in these groups. So that's been a big thing that I think we've all been really proud of, where at the end of the day, if we're able as a, company under 10 people to beat PwC and KPMG and Deloitte, that's that gets me fired up. On the flip side of that, right, is that we also get punched in the mouth by those folks sometimes. And that's part of competing. It's part of the game. But I would say the biggest challenge that we have as a small group of founder-led folks is we're still in founder-led sales and client delivery and, plugging in the internet cords on the back end and all of the things that hopefully get outsourced as you grow. That is a practical, challenge that I think all small groups wrestle with. But, I'd say we're in a real inflection point because folks are starting to recognize that investing in climate solutions is big business opportunities, and that data and knowledge is very unique and sparse in the market. So if there's a
Absolutely.
platform that packages it for you, that's what we're hoping to ride.
Amazing, amazing. Now, another trend really has been AI, right? AI has blown up in the last, 2, 3 years, and it's only going to get even bigger. So, what is your overall stance when it comes to AI and the new technology and software that's coming out and that's meant to help streamline businesses and perhaps make things better on the customer delivery and service point? So, what is your overall thoughts on AI? Do you think AI is here to stay? And is that something people need to become more aware of and start learning? Or do you think it's kind of, here 1 minute, gone the next? What is your experience with AI and what's your overall take on that front?
So I'm going to give a caveat here to the, to the world here that, we are a data science AI software company. I am not that part of the company. So I'll just say that right now. That being said, I have been able, by just being in the room and working with our clients, been able to come with a few takeaways. And I think one of the biggest takeaways that I've come from AI is it doesn't matter how slick the code is or algorithm, how slick it is, if the people putting it together haven't done the work before and don't have the
Yeah,
context in which to understand the problem nor the solution.
absolutely.
And that, in connecting it back to Rho, that's where we're really proud and think we are really differentiated is we're writing the code and we can show you decades of public track record of doing the work on the ground. That's a big shift than a lot of people in this market that are, riding the venture capital wave of, okay, people care about carbon. There's 1,000 carbon accounting platforms out there. They're going to fall or, be consolidated. It is this next level of where's the puck going that we're trying to skate to and make sure that we're ready here with a fully packaged platform for folks that want to make sure climate solutions win and that they make money, doing it.
Absolutely. Very well said, now. Very well said. Now, if we can look towards the future, right? I know yourself personally, you probably have some massive goals that you want to achieve. And even business-wise, yourselves and your team probably have some massive goals on the vision board. But what does the next 6 to 12 months look like, right? What are some goals on the vision board? And if you're looking back on things, maybe in 30, 40 years from now, sitting on the beach with a nice drink in your hand, what do you want to feel like you've achieved? What kind of impact do you feel like you want to have made that you're going to be able to sort of look back on and feel very proud? What does that look like in terms of the future of the company?
Yeah, I love that question, Harris, especially the 30 to 40-year timeline. So in the near term, a big push that we're charging towards at Rho is making Koi completely self-service. So you don't need to be a climate expert to be able to interact with climate data, contextualize it for your business. Right now, we're still in a point where we're actively supporting our clients working through these, but the goal is ultimately to make this a self-served capacity building support tool for anybody working on climate, from the folks that are informing the policymakers to the accelerators that are incubating, the next bubble gum and mud renewable energy combo. So let's pull that out 30 to 40 years on the beach. I want to look back here and essentially I'm going to be 34 years walking by somebody. They're going to be on the phone. They're going to say, oh yeah, I was just checking out Koi on this new climate solution I might be investing in. And then I walk by another person. I go, oh yeah, I was just checking out Koi because I work for policy work. Everybody who's working on climate, which by that time will be everyone, is using Koi to help inform their planning in resource allocation in work. That's the 30 to 40-year plan. When you think of climate change, you think of Koi.
Got it. Amazing. Amazing. Now, if we can, I guess, to wrap up on what is the biggest piece of advice or lesson you've learned in your journey of entrepreneurship and obviously growth, or perhaps the biggest piece of advice or lessons that anybody's ever given you, mentor, business partner, and what is something you've had to learn the hard way? Perhaps somebody watching in right now, they might hear this, really be able to take that in, and it might change their life, their business. What would you really like to say on that front? Their biggest piece of advice or lesson you've learned?
Yeah. Well, I would say, there's the part of me that wants to say follow your passion, the kind of plug and play list of guidance. But I would say truly and authentically, there are no breakthroughs without breakdowns. And there's going to be a lot of breakdowns on that entrepreneurial journey, both personally, as a group, as a company. And you never have those breakthrough moments and those aha moments when you're winning, when you're slapping five, when things are going well. So my biggest advice is essentially to really, and it's a little bit overused, but leverage those breakdowns for those breakthrough opportunities, because that's going to be what sustains you over the long haul, over the ebb and flow, the emotional journey of being an entrepreneur. And that's sort of followed by the second piece of advice, which I think is kind of two sides of the coin. Nobody's coming for you. You are the
Mm.
only one here to save you. And once you have that ownership and accountability for your own outcomes and your own future, that's a little bit of a mental shift that I personally had to go through as I was transitioning for different parts of my life. Nobody's coming. I am the
Mm.
cavalry. So let's go. And that's my advice to everyone out there that's grinding out the entrepreneurial meat grinder these days.
Amazing, amazing. Well, Noah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed myself. I'm enjoying the conversation. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation, and everybody watching has definitely learned a thing or two. So massive thank you from me. I really appreciate you coming on today. Is there any final comments you may have for maybe team, clients, people who perhaps want to reach out? Any final closing comments that you might have for anybody watching?
Yeah. Anybody working on climate, teamwork makes the dream work, and I am your guy. So hit me up and would love to, explore how we make it happen.
Amazing.
Harris, thanks for having me. This has been awesome, man.
No, no problem at all. My pleasure. So, no, thank you very much. And thanks to everyone who's tuned in. We'll catch everyone next time. Bye bye.